Good afternoon. It's Sunday, the 4th of January. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. The government has decided to withhold the transfer of funds to the Palestinian Authority as punishment for its applications for membership at the International Criminal Court and other United Nations organizations over the weekend. IBA's Margot Dukevich reports.
Israel is imposing economic sanctions against the Palestinian Authority and is considering prosecuting senior Palestinians for war crimes. This in response to a decision by the Palestinians to join the International Criminal Court and other UN bodies after their bid for statehood recognition at the United Nations Security Council last week failed to win the required 9 votes to pass. The move was condemned by Jerusalem and Washington. Israel decided to freeze the transfer of some $125 million from tax funds collected on behalf of the Palestinian Authority each month. The funds were to have been transferred to the Palestinians on Friday. It is the Palestinian Authority who choose to wage a confrontation against Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said at today's cabinet meeting. We can't be expected to sit with folded arms while the Palestinians submit an application of membership to the ICC, he said.
Both sides should respect previous commitments, and once the Palestinians are violating all the basic commitments of the Oslo Accords, and they are taking unilateral steps, Israel will react. And by the way, it's exactly like the world is freezing Iranian money in order to pressure Iran to fulfill its international obligations.
Additional steps being considered by Israel includes the possibility of prosecuting top Palestinian officials, such as President Mahmoud Abbas, on charges of war crimes. Ever since a unity deal was forged with Hamas in April this year, Israel views the Palestinian leadership as collaborators with the terrorist organization. Palestinian officials slammed Israel's decision to freeze the tax revenues, calling it an act of Israeli piracy and a breach of international law. Palestinian negotiator Saeb Erekat said Israel's decision to withhold the funds will bring ruin and destruction to the Palestinian Authority, and said he expects the Israelis to vote for peace and neighborly ties with the Palestinians. Yesterday, the UN confirmed receipt of the documents delivered by Riyad Mansour, the permanent observer of Palestine at the UN. Applications were made to 16 international treaties, including the Rome Statute of the ICC. The Palestinians said joining the ICC will enable them to prosecute Israel of suspected war crimes. In another development that threatened to cause more tension, the Palestinian website Arab 48 reported today that Foreign Minister Victor Lieberman met Abbas's arch-rival Mohammed Dahlan secretly a number of times in Europe. Netanyahu informed Abbas that he had no knowledge of the meetings, but Palestinian officials said Shin Bet head Yoram Cohen said the meetings between Lieberman and Dahlan were not official and took place before a decision was made to hold new elections in March. Margot Dukevich, IBA News.
There's a great deal of political news with a recount in some of the Likud primary districts and a surprising new addition to the Hadash party. But first, IBA's political reporter Eli Wogelenter brings us up to date on cabinet developments.
In his first comment on Jerusalem's decision to freeze the transfer of 500 million shekel to the Palestinian Authority, Prime Minister Netanyahu said IDF soldiers will continue to defend the state of Israel with determination and might. Just as they defend us, we will protect them with the same determination and the same might. At the start of the weekly cabinet meeting, Netanyahu blasted the PA for choosing confrontation and said those who need to answer before a criminal court are the heads of the Palestinian Authority who have forged an alliance with the war criminals of Hamas. The cabinet also was due to vote today on whether to move IDF bases to the south. Netanyahu said moving the bases will lead to a great change in the Negev. International companies are coming to the Negev, strong populations are going there, major development is coming to the Negev. And he noted that vacating bases in Srifin, Sirkin, Tel HaShomer, Ramat Gan and elsewhere as well as moving the Israel military industries, will create the possibility of building approximately 100,000 new residential units in the high-demand areas in the center of the country. Turning to the Knesset election, it appears there were some irregularities in the Likud primary election last Wednesday. Senior officials in the party claimed last night that errors were made in the vote counting process, so party activists gathered at noon today with members of the party's Central Committee to recount the votes in several polling stations. For example, it seems that MK Tzachi Negbi received 278 votes in the Druze town of Beit Yan, but only 198 people voted there. Other possible counting mistakes were made in Modi'in and in Yarka, a Druze village northeast of Akko. Party sources are saying the error occurred because of human error, bookkeeping, they say, with the number of votes written down not matching the actual number of votes cast at those polling stations. Likud confirmed there had been several mistakes, but noted that since this occurred only in a small number of polling stations, the chance it will significantly affect the composition of the list is very small. And the three Knesset Arab parties are inching closer to a unity deal after a meeting yesterday of the Socialist Hadash party ended in a decision to pursue negotiations on a merger with the Balad and Ram-Tal parties. Hadash's meeting in Nazareth was attended by Avraham Burg, a former member of Knesset for the Labour Party, a former Speaker of the Knesset, and former head of the Jewish Agency and World Zionist Organization. He expressed his support for the left-wing party in the upcoming election, though it is not clear that he will run for a spot on their Knesset ticket. Hadash, which has both Arab and Jewish members, decided to condition a deal to merge with the other two Arab parties on the inclusion of Jews and women on the joint ticket. Berg, an observant Jew, said that he had traveled to the conference on Shabbat because advancing solidarity between Jews and Arabs was, quote, a matter of life and death that trumped the ban on Sabbath travel. Aaron?
Thanks for that report. Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman launched a bitter attack against European and Palestinian leaders today, saying that Ramallah's unilateral moves toward statehood prove the death of the Oslo peace accords. Speaking at a conference of Israel's European ambassadors, Lieberman also accused European parliaments of recreating anti-Semitic lies. He singled out Sweden and Ireland, where both nations' parliaments approved recognition of Palestinian statehood. Lieberman went on to say that the two countries' attitudes toward Israel are like another chapter of the notorious anti-Semitic hoax publication, The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. He went on to compare the Europeans' actions to the Munich 1938 agreement, in which Britain and France ceded control of the Sudetenland region to Germany as an appeasement that failed to prevent the Second World War. The foreign minister stressed the importance of regaining alliances in Europe following the overwhelming support of Palestinian statehood by the European Union last month. Lieberman also called for Israel to take the initiative in reviving the peace process instead of simply reacting to Palestinian moves. With the ongoing investigation of Israel Beitenu, some are saying that the public in general will be turned off and not vote at all. IBA's Eli Wogelenter asked a couple of Likud members of Knesset if they were worried that the allegations of corruption among politicians will turn away the public come March 17th.
This is why I'm always saying to everybody, look around you. You can influence the politics and the politician. And what you need to do, first of all, to be candidate, to be involved, to vote, to show that you want to vote for parties that have elections, that have primaries, that it's not like the chairman is put everybody inside, and it's like we see, unfortunately, the majority of the member of the parliament. So if everybody will understand that they will vote for the democratic parties that have elections and primaries, I think the parliament will look differently, for sure.
Well, such phenomena are not new, and so far the country proved that once there are solid proofs against leaders, you don't make any concessions. The prime minister, the president, ministers, many ministers were indicted. Those who proved their innocence were acquitted. But we have a very good judicial system, and we have a very good law enforcement organizations.
President Reuven Rivlin is appealing to the public to show up in large numbers to participate in the elections and not to ignore the democratic right to vote. He made the call after being presented with the 2014 report on the Israel Democratic Index by the Israel Democracy Institute that serves as a critical barometer of public opinion. The annual report presented data finding that 3/4 of Israeli Jews and 64% of Israeli Arabs believe politicians look out for their own self-interests more than those of the public who elected them. Only 35% of the Jewish sector and 36% of the Arab public believe that the Knesset is trustworthy. The president cautioned that disillusionment and indifference are the greatest dangers to democracy and advised voters to support one of the two major political blocs to make it easier for the next government to form a ruling coalition. And on a more upbeat note, 86% of Jews and 65% of Arabs say that they are very or quite proud to be Israeli. And joining us now in the studio is political scientist Wasim Yunus from the Al-Qasemi College in the city of Baqa al-Gharbiya in the Galilee. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
All right, it appears as though the former head of the World Zionist Organization and Labour Party Knesset member Avram Burg will be joining the Communist Hadash Party, which is predominantly Arab. How is this news being received in the Arab sector?
Listen, to a large extent, I think that it is, first of all, it was a surprise. But because of the fact that Avram Burg is considered to be, to a large extent, a person who symbolizes actually the post-Zionism era, and Arabs are afraid actually that Arab nationalism will become not that clear in terms of, you know, a Hadash or the Front for Peace and Equality and Democracy, which is primarily speaking an Arab party, and there are Jews who simply joined this party, but now it is actually, they are trying to recruit very many Jews, and then it seems the case that this will actually spoil the interest of Arabs to create unity in order to go to the Knesset as one Arab united party or less to the Knesset. But now, because of the fact that there are very many Jews, they are very, very famous, they are afraid that this will not help Arabs, as an understatement, when they go to the Knesset.
Now, how are those reunification efforts to collate the Arab parties, which perhaps will include Hadash? How are they? What's the status of those efforts?
To be honest with you, it's a kind of mishmash now. Nobody exactly knows what's going on. Yesterday there was a conference, a meeting actually, between all parties, Arab parties in Nazareth, and at the end of the event, it was not clear whether they will unite or not. But it is clear, or actually there was a debate around whether it is healthy in terms of politics to run in one Arab united list to the Knesset, or there should be two parties at least in order to increase the level of competition between the parties. Otherwise, and you know, having very many Jews in these Arab parties, especially after the electoral threshold was raised, this might not be perceived by Arab voters as an element that might spur them to go and vote to the Knesset.
Now, you point out the number of Jews running with Arab parties, but on the other hand, we have an Arab woman who is running as a candidate in Baita UD, and there are other Arab as well as Druze candidates that are included in other factions on the list. Do you think that these parties may attract the Arab vote, or if you know the percentages, tell us, does the Arab community in general only support the Arab parties?
To a large extent, I believe that the Arab community especially after the nation-state bill, there are debates around this issue. And primarily speaking, I think that the vast majority of Arab voters will support Arab parties. But I think also that if the Arab parties, especially in this time, won't unite, this might spoil the efforts actually to go to the Knesset.
They might not meet the threshold.
Yes, of course. And in addition to this, don't forget that there are secular parties and there are religious parties. And this kind of androgynous, to put all sides, all edges together, it's very difficult. But people say simply that it is actually a case of, it is a very, very substantial case that we are facing these days. And it touches the very substance of our living here in the State of Israel as indigenous Arabs, Palestinians who live in the State of Israel. Israel.
We're just about out of time, but what do you make about reports that polling indicates that if there is going to be a united Arab list, that most Arab voters would like to see Ahmed Tibi head that list?
That's right. I think that, first of all, this is not new. Apparently, there are certain features that Ahmed Tibi merits in, and indeed, the vast majority of voters see that Ahmed Tibi can indeed represent Arabs locally and internationally, and very often we see Ahmed Tibi is talking about symbolic based issues, and very often represents the issue of Arabs and the Palestinians in the United Nations, and also this linkage between the Arabs who live in Israel and the Arabs who live in the West Bank and the diaspora. Mostly it is represented by Ahmed Tibi, right. But unfortunately Ahmed Tibi is not found in a position in which he can dictate on others that because of the fact that the polls show these results, then you have to take me.
Exactly. Well, we'll wait and see. Wasim Yunus of the Al-Qasemi College, thank you very much for being our guest this evening.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
An Israeli imprisoned 2 years ago in Egypt for allegedly attempting to enter the country illegally was released last night and returned to Israel. Andrei Psheshnikov was sentenced back in February of 2013 after reportedly confessing to membership in several Palestinian organizations in Gaza and the West Bank. The 26-year-old arrived from Tajikistan 11 years ago, served in the IDF, and enlisted for career military service. According to his mother, he previously lived near a refugee camp in the Bethlehem area and wanted to prove that Israelis and Arabs could live together. Former Arkansas politician and Fox television host Mike Huckabee says that he's leaving his talk show as he considers whether to seek the Republican nomination for U.S. president. The staunch supporter of Israel said goodbye to his viewers during last night's edition of his show, which has been broadcast now for more than 6 years. The 59-year-old former Baptist preacher and Arkansas governor from 1996 to 2007 is a favorite among social conservatives and previously competed for the Republican presidential nomination in 2008 before bowing out when it became clear that John McCain would win the party race. A decision on whether he intends to toss his hat into the ring again is expected this coming spring. Buckingham Palace is denying allegations from a woman who claims in Florida court documents that as a minor she was forced to have intercourse with Britain's Prince Andrew. The woman, identified in court as Jane Doe No. 3 and by the media as Virginia Roberts, says that Jewish financier Jeffrey Epstein made her have relations with the Duke of York at a number of locations as part of orgies with numerous men and other underage girls. Her accusation comes as part of an ongoing civil case brought against the U.S. government by several women who say that they were abused by Epstein, who is a registered sex offender and served jail time for soliciting an underage girl for prostitution in 2008. Among those who allegedly participated in the orgies was Harvard professor Alan Dershowitz, who is a prominent pro-Israel advocate.
My goal is to bring charges against the client and require her to speak in court. If she believes she has been hurt by me and by Prince Andrew, she should be suing us for damages. I welcome that lawsuit. I welcome any opportunity which would put her under oath and require her to state under oath these false allegations.
And what was your relationship with Epstein when you were his lawyer?
I was his lawyer. I represented him. Before I was his lawyer, I was a social acquaintance. He came to Harvard on several occasions, sat into my classes. I was at his home for parties with a large number of mostly scientists, mostly men, dinner parties, intellectual gatherings. I then became his lawyer. I've now not seen him for a period of time.
And Prince Andrew was also named in these documents. What is your relationship with him?
I've met him on maybe a handful of occasions. He came to my class at Harvard Law School. There was a lunch sponsored by the Harvard Law School for him. I've never been alone with Prince Andrew. I have never been alone with Prince Andrew or Jeffrey Epstein. I've never been with Prince Andrew and any women.
Turning now to sports, and the Hapoel Tel Aviv Basketball Club is set to inaugurate its brand new sports hall with an Israel League battle against Hapoel Jerusalem later tonight. Tel Aviv will play its first game in the 3,400-seat Arik Einstein Arena against Jerusalem, which is trying to break a 4-game league losing streak and get back on the right track after starting the season with a 9-0 record. All the action can be seen live on Channel 1 tonight, starting at 8:50. Workers at the cash-strapped Pri HaGalil factory in the north barricaded themselves within the plant's grounds this morning to protest the failure by management to reopen the cannery following a week-long closure. The personnel locked the gate and erected a protest tent just outside the facility, barring anyone or anything from entering or leaving the Chatzor HaGlilit compound. Last week, Pri HaGalil sent its workers home on a forced vacation after management said that it was unable to pay for a business permit to keep the facility open. Pri HaGalil, which was founded in 1951, says the root of the problem is a failure by the Economy Ministry to transfer some of the 9 million shekel grant that the government agreed to provide it in 2009 to keep the struggling company open. Jordan has suspended talks with Israel over a proposed multi-billion-dollar deal for natural gas. This, according to the Jordanian Al Gad newspaper, reporting today that Amman cut off negotiations after Israel's antitrust authority ruled last month that the partnership between the U.S.-based Noble Energy and Israel's Delek Group constituted a cartel that had to either be dismantled or have certain holdings sold off. That decision means the deal that was signed between Jerusalem and Amman in September for Israel to supply the Hashemite kingdom with $15 billion worth of natural gas over 15 years could either be delayed, canceled, or significantly amended. Taking a look at local finance, and with no currency trading on Sundays, the shekel remains the same, while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange started off the trading week with a mixed performance. Here's a look at the mid-afternoon numbers. Turning now to the weather, and as forecast, the first of the winter snow fell on Mount Hermon in overnight storms. At least 2 centimeters landed on the lower altitudes of the northern mountain, which is home to the nation's only ski facility. Heavy rains drenched other parts of the country, and storms in the north dumped between 30 to 40 millimeters in the Golan and the Galilee, causing the level of the Sea of Galilee to rise by 1 centimeter. Around 20 to 30 millimeters fell in the center, with some areas, including Rehovot, experiencing flooding. Meteorologists say that this is the first of 2 waves of extreme weather conditions, with the second expected to hit us on Tuesday night and Wednesday, when we may even see snow flurries here in the capital. We can expect more rainstorms throughout the evening in the north and center of the country, and tomorrow we'll be seeing partly cloudy and slightly warmer conditions, strong winds along the coast, and rain in the north. Here's the forecast at home and abroad over the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. I'll be back at this desk tomorrow to bring you the latest breaking news from Israel. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a great evening and shalom from Jerusalem.